It's so nice to see so many people filling up Shamrock once again, listening to Ukrainapodden. So thank you very much all for coming. And a big applause for Olena Halushka, please. Regular listeners of the show know that you're one of the founders and leaders of International Center for Ukrainian Victory. And we brought you on stage today to try to understand a little bit more about the current political situation in and around Ukraine. Because the last year we've seen a lot of peace negotiations with the US, a lot of pressure from the White House. And within the last week, we've had some conversations with Russia as well. How should we understand this? Are we coming closer to an end for the war? Or
I wish that we would be coming closer to the end of the war, but I have the feeling that the peace is actually much further away from us than it was even in 2022. Somebody told me, and I actually liked this very much, that what the US is presently doing, they are not bringing peace, they are setting the parameters of the next phase of this war. Because unpunished evil always grows and always comes back. And Russia is committing full-scale aggression, which is a genocidal war. Presently, Russians are bombing to the Stone Age Kyiv's electricity grid and energy system, and just right now as I speak, it is the 5th hour of the ongoing air raid Russian against Kyiv electricity facilities. And this is a crime against humanity. It was even recognized by the International Criminal Court. I mean, they are usually pretty reserved in their statements, you know. And in 2022-2023, Russia already bombed our electricity grid. And ICC issued arrest warrants for a couple of top Russian military officials. And they were supposed to be arrested for committing the crime against humanity. And this is unfolding right now. You know, the world is watching it live and nothing is happening. And instead, we are hearing the absolutely crazy ideas, like let's make Ukrainian military leave the towns that belong to Ukraine and just hand these territories to Russia, which Russians cannot occupy. They tried, but they failed since 2014. That's why, you know, I mean, it's like meeting a bully, you know, in a dark street. If he is unpunished, if he feels full impunity, why would he stop violations? Why would he stop the crimes? So unfortunately, I'm not seeing peace coming. I very much commend the efforts of the Ukrainian President Zelensky to try and be on board of those talks, but I do not really understand the behavior of European leaders. I mean, if European leaders strongly stood behind Ukraine and called out this capitulation process as the capitulation process as it is right now, it would significantly strengthen Ukraine's stances. And it would help us, you know, to have not only the coalition of the willing to do what? We need the coalition of victory. And unfortunately, it is still not there.
Speaking of European leaders and their focus lately, how do you think it affects the war in Ukraine and potential peace talks and military support that European leaders has had to start focusing on how to deter a military attack on Greenland and starting to send delegations of their military to Greenland? I'm not saying that is something that's going to happen, but we know for a fact that is something that builds or takes capacity both politically and militarily in Europe. How's the feeling in Ukraine about how that affects you?
Well, Greenland indeed has stolen all of the headlines. and Russia has been bombing Ukrainian critical infrastructure. People are freezing in their homes with no heating, no electricity, no running water, no sewage. And world media are reporting about Greenland, about a couple of European military coming in, coming out, Trump's statements. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. We must keep focused on what really matters. I'm not saying that Greenland doesn't matter, because in case if the US decides to move forward on Greenland, well, I cannot say it will be the end of the world order, because from my perspective, the rules-based world order has already ended way before even the full-scale war started, because Russian aggressions were never punished. I mean, Russia, after getting the independence, committed 2 Chechen wars, invaded Georgia, invaded Ukraine in 2014. Many people tend to forget this, that the war started in 2014. Then committed absolutely horrible war crimes in Syria. Now the full-scale aggression, and everything was met with full impunity. But unfortunately, the current US policies seem to very much follow this spheres of influence approach. But I have a clear question, to people here in audience. What sphere of influence you will be living in? Are you actually ready to be somebody's sphere of influence? Because if this scenario is implemented, then you will be Russia's sphere of influence. And many people do not really understand what is Russian occupation. I'm using this half anecdotic situation, but it's very serious. The Russian occupation is not ordering your beer on Russian language from the Russian language menu. Russian occupation is torture chambers. Russian occupation is hundreds of people being abducted, thrown into torture prisons, mass graves, indoctrination of children, educating your children to be Russia's soldiers in the next phases of the Russian war of conquest. You do not want to live under Russian occupation. Neither we want to do this. But we understand that only those countries that have actually skin in the game can help us win this war. That's why we arrived over again, and thank you very much for having me on this podcast. It's not my first time here. I mean, I'm pretty regularly traveling to Norway. Why? Because I believe in Norway. I believe in your leadership potential. I believe that you, along with the other Nordic and Baltic states, can make the real difference, because you understand what is at stake. We need you.
Yeah, and I heard that you said you believe in our leadership potential, not leadership. So that's noted. But yeah, it's been a quite turbulent year for the internal political situation in Ukraine as well. We had the Operation Midas, the corruption investigation that kind of saw the fall of Andrei Yermak, kind of, I guess you could call him one of the most or the most powerful man of Ukraine, if I'm not using too strong words. How is the political situation right now? Like, is Zelensky's power base still solid and stable, or is he a more vulnerable president now than he was a year ago?
Well, his power is solid because he is our chief commander in this war. And we pretty much understand what is at stake. And basically one of, from my perspective, key reasons why Russia is engaging in these peace talks or why they are demanding the elections is particularly because they want us to fight us. They want Ukrainians to fight Ukrainians. They want us to be polarized. But I will make a strong case, which many people often tend to not understand, that our fight against corruption is strengthening us. It is not weakening us, because strong institutions and strong army will save Ukraine. That's something what helped us to survive in 2022, then to survive till today, and to survive further. And the source of legitimacy for fighting against corruption in Ukraine is the people of Ukraine. Not the European Union, IMF, Americans, whatever else, but the people of Ukraine. We went out to the streets in 2014 for the revolution of dignity. I mean, how many countries do you know that did the revolutions of dignity? Because for Ukrainians, dignity is not an empty word. It is a decent life Ukrainian people deserved. And part of this decent life is rule of law, zero tolerance to corruption, protection of human rights, etc., etc. And ever since, in any public opinion polls, people were demanding the fight against corruption. You know, we are even saying that, we are joking that for Ukrainians, probably they will say that fight against corruption is really effective when, I don't know, entire parliament will be behind bars. So people have sort of a bit too higher expectations sometimes. But we are into the procedures and institutions. And that's why since 2014 we have done a super boring, super nitty-gritty work on establishing first the investigative body. Then we realized that if the good investigative body is overseen by the old prosecutor's office, it's not gonna work. We established the new special prosecutor's anti-corruption office. Then, if those cases are going to ordinary courts, they fall apart. We did a high anti-corruption court. We did a lot of transparency tools and mechanisms. And now they are bringing fruits. And the fact that you are reading the news about high-profile anti-corruption investigations engaging people from a very close entourage to the president is the signal that the system is cleaning itself, and not the signal that the system is weak, they are hopelessly corrupt if they steal during the full-scale war. I mean, war is always about secrecy, lack of transparency, and that unfortunately creates the opportunity for abuse. But not the mistake characterizes the system, but the way how the mistake is treated and the response to the mistake. And I think that our institutions are really doing a great job.
Yeah, and I guess there's kind of the more corruption you bring into light, the more it seems like there is corruption. But if you have no corruption cases, it feels like you have less corruption, which might not.
We didn't really have many corruption cases during Yanukovych rules. The corruption was of Yulia Tymoshenko. I'm not judging her, but that very specific case was very political and questionable. And maybe also Lutsenko. Does that mean that we didn't have corruption during Yanukovych? Oh, we had a lot of corruption during his time. But right now we are addressing the problem. And back then it was just, you know, endemic corruption.
Yeah. And it's pretty cold outside in Oslo tonight, but inside here it's really nice and warm. I'm kind of regretting my choice of wearing wool underneath my jeans tonight. But how is the situation for you back in Ukraine? How is it to be living in Kyiv or Lviv or another big Ukrainian city nowadays? Can you kind of describe how that is? Like, what's a normal day like?
Since October, Russia has conducted more than 250 attacks on Ukraine's energy facilities. They almost fully destroyed our hydro and thermal power plants, and they are about to destroy the transmission lines from the nuclear power plants. And before I explain the everyday life, I want every one of you to think about how your critical energy infrastructure is protected in case if hundreds of drones and missiles are coming in to knock it down. Of course, living in megapolis without electricity is similar to hell. I mean, you do not have, at my home, and I think that I'm pretty lucky one, I had like maybe 5 hours of electricity per day in total. Then I did have the heating that allowed me to keep plus 15 degrees Celsius of temperature at home. In the morning, it fell to up to 10% degrees. And I have running water. And that is, you know, super great. I mean, I'm really lucky. People who are, and I also have a gas stove, which allows me to cook hot dishes. I know that you do not eat hot dishes here in Norway, but we in Ukraine eat hot dishes, and we love that. And that allowed me to keep this, to have my 5-year-old son basically not hungry. But if you speak, let's say, about a 25-story building, which is fully dependent on electricity, that means that no electricity, no cooking, no electricity, no elevators, no electricity, very often no warm, or the pumping equipment is not bringing water up, and therefore no sewage. That's the humanitarian catastrophe. And if you take a look at the photos, you know, of the state emergency service putting those big tents and the Kyiv people lining up to those tents because they can get warm food, they can get, you know, some warmth, and they can charge their phones. Fortunately, we still have mobile connection, so at least you can text your loved ones that you are alive after the another Russian bombings. And those bombings are happening super regularly, like once per, I don't know, every second night. Because Russia particularly targets Kyiv in order to make the life in Kyiv unlivable. Because they hope that they would be able, you know, to put us on our knees. And they hope that they would be able to make Kyiv people, I don't know, make Zelensky surrender, or what is their plan. They absolutely do not understand Ukrainians. They absolutely do not understand our society, our people, our mentality. You know, we have a saying in Ukraine that even in the darkness, it is very clear to us that Russia is a terrorist state, and we are hating terrorist state.
But how is the flow of people from Kyiv affecting the rest of Ukraine or Western Ukraine? I imagine that the full-scale war has been going on for several years, and there's not a large ability to accept more internal refugees than they already have.
That's a very good question. I haven't seen the clear figures, but I know that many people in Europe are more preoccupied of having refugees than of actually, you know, Ukrainians surviving this winter. And I have to tell you that you are not seeing the millions of refugees from Ukraine only because people, as the first line of flight, is either outside of Kyiv or the western regions of Ukraine. So many people still hope that they would be able to spend the winter somewhere in Ukraine, and then probably in spring the things get a bit better. But first, we have to understand that if Russia succeeds in destroying our energy system, well, yes, in spring people won't be freezing, but it won't be that better because the electricity won't get back to the 25-story buildings, the elevators won't work, the stoves won't work, and so on and so forth. So that's why I would like to thank Norway very much for this amazing initiative that you are having right now with collecting power generators for Ukraine. Please, if you can do one thing tonight, please contact your acquaintances, ask them, especially if you're connected to the businesses, ask them if they have industrial generators, small generators. I mean, since 2022, I've been preaching power transformers. You know, when everyone was talking about generators, our International Center for Ukrainian Victory was speaking about power transformers because we talked about how to keep, you know, the energy system alive and not power a specific multi-story house, because that's not the solution. But today, people can die of freezing. So I strongly ask you to look for all of the possibilities, for all of the solutions, and send whatever is possible to Kyiv. Because if we allow Russia to destroy Ukraine's energy grid, that would be a humanitarian catastrophe. On the refugees, I haven't seen figures, but I see that many people try to stay in Kyiv. Many people who had the chance, mostly, you know, who have relatives or who have friends who can welcome them, probably took a small break, you know, moving out. But again, I'm very worried that if Russians target nuclear power plants, that would not be already even about the electricity or humanitarian catastrophe. You probably all remember Chernobyl and how this ended. Radiation has no borders, and radiation could pretty much contaminate Europe. And what is the response of the free world to Russia targeting Ukraine's nuclear power plants? Why our sky, at least over the nuclear power plants, are not patrolled together with the European air forces?
I think we'll soon do a change on the scene here, but I think my last question for you is how do you want Norway to develop their leadership potential? Like, if you're gonna, you have some concrete tips or wishes from Norway?
That's the last question, which you want me to talk till tomorrow's morning. Actually, we have a very clear wish list. We came here with, and a big part or chapter is what my colleague Lyuba will be speaking about. But first of all, the first and basic thing that I would very much ask you to keep in mind is that let's change this cognitive warfare, which we have already lost under the influence of Russia, and switch from this survival mode into victory mode. At the moment you believe that Russia is not invincible, that Ukraine can win this war, and defeating Russia in Ukraine should be our top priority, that entire list of your sort of actions is changing. Because survival requires one set of tools, victory requires a whole different set of tools. And we truly hope that Norway can help us with the air defenses. Like, again, the most very, very basic needs that we need is anti-cruise missiles, systems and interceptors. Technology to fight against drones. We have them in Ukraine, but we need funding to scale that up significantly. But also we need to think about the capabilities that America presently is having full monopoly. I mean, for me personally, the most pressing need is anti-ballistics. How come that nobody in Europe has anti-ballistic capabilities? What you are going to do in case if America decides that they are not supplying PAC-3 missiles to Europe because they need them for other wars? I mean, you will be exposed to the Russian ballistic threats, and we need Norway to take the lead on the technological race, you know. And if we have this leadership, if we have Norway/Nordic Ukrainian partnership, I think this war is winnable. We just have to make the decision to win this war.
Perfect. Thank you so much. As you said, we could be talking about this until tomorrow, but unfortunately, I think our time with you tonight is up. So thank you so much, Olena Halushka, and please welcome Lyuba Shipovich. Lyuba is an engineer building Ukraine's drone army. I think that's kind of how we try to sell you in.
It's not a bunch of people.
Yeah, luckily it's not only you, but you're one of the people building the drone army, and that's a huge task. And kind of try to you're the founder of Dignitas. Can you try to explain our audience what Dignitas and you do? Like, what's your task or mission?
Okay, so Dignitas is a charitable foundation fully focused on technological support of Ukrainian armed forces. We train military on technology, we supply military with technology, and we advocate for technological changes within the Ukrainian armed forces and also armies of our partners. Because we truly believe that Ukraine, as strong our partners are. It's like in school, when you're being bullied, you want a strong guys behind you. So same as Ukraine, we want our partners to be really strong. That's why we share all information on technological advantage on the front line with our partners.
Yeah, and you, as I understand it, you make every kind of drone, more or less, both in the air and land-based drones.
Yeah, so we do train on all kinds of technology, on software, situation awareness platforms, combat maps, all kinds of drones, reconnaissance drones, FPV drones, bombers, middle strike, deep strike drones, UGV, which is unmanned ground vehicles, ground robots, also under-surface drones, and pretty much all kinds of drones.
So not just drone army, but drone air force and drone navy as well.
Yeah, all kinds of robots in the sky, on the ground, underwater, and on surface.
Wow. And how do you cooperate with the frontline units? Like, how does that work when you're, as an engineer, making your drone? Like, how is that process from you making the drone until it crashes into a Russian target?
Yeah, so to be clear, I'm not making a drone. I'm managing charity funds that supports training on different kinds of drones, supplying the army with drones, and advocating for all those technological changes. As for connection with brigades on the front line, so we are working very closely with the general staff, with the Ministry of Defense, and we are not trying to replace them or compete with them. We are just covering gaps that are not covered yet by the Ministry of Defense. But we understand, as an NGO, we cannot win the war by ourselves. So we're trying to strengthen institutions. We do not create any private school, private training centers. We work at the official training centers of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, and also in almost every military unit close to the front line. The nature of this war, it's the most technological war ever happened in the world. So, and technology is changing so rapidly that something that is working today might not work in 2 weeks. So you cannot just train your soldiers back in training centers. You have to be present inside brigade and constantly train them on new technology. So we have our instructors working in the training centers, but also all over the front line in brigades. And I often call them viruses because they catch technology at one brigade and spread it among all others. So we're like virus spreading information through the front line, and also bringing it back to the general staff to advocate them to implement on a scale really successful, effective technologies.
What is the speed of development compared to a year ago or 2 years ago when it comes to either just a change in the software of the drone or a new generation of drones? Is the development speeding up, or has it been high all the time?
I think it's pretty rapid since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. Otherwise, we won't survive. I truly believe in technology. Technology is our religion. I believe that due to technology, we've been able to stand against Russia at the beginning of full-scale invasion when no one in the world believed in us. When all the West was just watching, would they survive? And civilian technology is what helped us to survive. Civilian DJI drones, like hobby drones, those that you use to film your weddings or traveling, civilian Starlinks, civilian satellite phones, radios, and so on. And then later on, we started to adopt this technology for military use. And to be honest, we didn't invent any new technology. Just think about it. We didn't invent anything new. We just find a new way how to use technology from civilian world.
And how much of the drones you develop and work with are kind of how much is produced, all the parts in Ukraine, and how much comes from, for example, China? Like how to say independent are the Ukrainian drone infrastructure?
I think we are pretty good at localizing development. Like if you look at 2022, 2023, it was not like actually production, it was mostly assembling of drones from Chinese parts. But then Ukrainian manufacturers moved to localizing components. And as of now, we have, I know at least few drones that are 100% made out of Ukrainian components. So another issue came up, secondary components. Components for components. Like we can produce drone engines in Ukraine, but we still use magnets from China, magnets for drone engines. So now it's the biggest challenge how to localize production of the secondary components. And it's an issue not only for Ukraine, but for all European countries. As Olena mentioned, we are very dependent on Chinese chemicals, Chinese magnets, and so on.
But what's the biggest bottleneck for scaling this? Is it material? Is it people? Is it facilities or money? What do you need to build scale in this development?
I think all of this, but first of all, understanding that we need to localize it. It's much more expensive than importing from China, but it's a cost of our national security. And like it's true for any country. With like European Union, globalization, we've built a lot of the supply chains, and almost every country is dependent on other countries. But like, and it was a good movement if all countries in the world were democratic countries and share the same values. But this is not the case. And now we see with the new world order that you have to be strong by themselves. You cannot rely even on your good partners, because your partners yesterday might not be your partners today or tomorrow. As we see with the United States. I hate to see this because I used to live in the United States for 16 years. I really love this country. But now I feel that every country has to be independent, like truly independent in like food security, defense security, like all aspects of our lives. And it could be more expensive, but it's really the cost of our national security, and we're willing to pay it.
Yeah, and Olena kind of mentioned it already, air defense. I know that you're also developing interceptor drones, which is some kind of air defense drones for shooting down Shaheeds. Like how is that going?
Okay, so at Dignitas we started to train military on drone interceptors more than a year ago. We tried to keep it in a secret, but you know, Polish disclose all our secrets. When Ukrainian manufacturers sold drones to Polish army, they invited all the media to the polygon. They announced exactly with coordinates, date and time, and they took picture of drones from all angles. So it's not a secret anymore. And we decided to also go public with our anti-Shaheed project. It's called Freedom Sky. We do train our military on interceptors drones, Ukrainian manufactured drones, and also two types of US manufactured drones. They are really effective. And besides training military on interceptors, we realized that Russian attack drones like Shaheeds, they're not only tactical level drones, because Shaheed could target somewhere close to the front line in Pokrovsk or Kharkiv, but the same drone can reach western Ukraine, like Lviv or Uzhhorod. So it's not tactical level weapon anymore. It's both tactic and strategic level. And to protect our cities that are far from the front line, we cannot do this only with military sources. So we need to bring more people to air defense. And we started to train civilians how to intercept drones. And at the same time, we advocated the government to adopt new legislation. And I think it's pretty unique what happened in Ukraine in December. New legislation was adopted that allows to create private air defense initiative. So it's like pretty unique in the world, and it's happening in Ukraine. So now, like any company that is willing to protect their facilities could hire people, equip them, train them, and in coordination with air forces, appoint them to a specific location to be able to intercept Shahid drones.
So if you have, for example, like a factory, you can hire your own team of air defense interceptor trained people, and they will protect your factory against Shaheeds.
Yeah, like security guys that you hire to protect your pub, for example, you can hire a team to protect you from Russian drones.
Wow! And how efficient are those interceptor drones? Like, for example, if there's comes one Shahed, how many interceptor drones do you need to take one down? Like, do you have any statistics that says something about that?
So there are two different types of interceptors. One is with fixed wings, like a plane, and the other is FPV type. So for FPV types, effectiveness is about 60%. For fixed wing, it's about 80%. It used to be 90% during summer, but it decreased during winter because of weather and so on. So, but still, 80% of effectiveness.
That's really good. But what's you say you have both FPV type of interceptor and a plane type of interceptor? What's the pros and cons for is the reason you still build both types, or what's the pros and cons for each model?
Yeah, so FPV is much cheaper. It's easier to produce, but it's more complicated to operate. So you would need more skilled operators to operate FPV drones. But we train on them. It takes about a month to be trained on FPV types interceptor. But it's much easier to scale production for FPV types, and they're available on the market even for civilians, because there's enough capacity to produce them. As for fixed wing interceptors, production is more complicated. There are not enough capacity for this type of drones, but operation of them is really easy. So it's like compare, like Porsche or like self-driving Tesla with like cheap Chinese car.
Yeah. So both has its use, but there's pros and cons with both.
Yeah, so we can have many of FPV drones and less fixed-wing drones, but like we need both, and we train on both types.
Yeah, and we still unfortunately see every night that a lot of Shaheeds comes through Ukraine's air defense. The number varies, but is there a lack of interceptor drones, lack of all kind of air defense, or what's needed to close the sky completely for the Shahed drones, or is that not possible in the scale we see?
Very good question, actually. So we have, I would say not enough, but close to enough interceptors. But to be able to intercept drone, besides having interceptors, you need the entire infrastructure. And first of all, radars. You can intercept drones if you see them. If you don't see them, even having like many interceptors you cannot intercept, Shahids if you don't see it. And radars production is very limited, and mostly because it was highly regulated all over the world. It made sense to regulate radars when they use radars to detect ballistic missiles or jets or something big. But for what's so-called slow-moving targets, which are drones, it just doesn't make sense to regulate radars protection. So currently we advocated for Ukrainian government and also European governments to remove restrictions on radars, research and development, production, and selling radar. So currently, if as a private donor you are willing to buy radar, like you cannot do it without permission from the government.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it doesn't make sense to keep them at this level of restriction security. Actually, it's like similar happened to electronic warfare. Before the full-scale invasion, it was also highly regulated. And I believe it's still highly regulated in most of European countries. You cannot just buy electronic warfare and jam GPS signals, spoof GPS signal here in Oslo. But in Ukraine, it was deregulated in 2023, and it actually helped to grow our R&D and production of electronic warfare. So I believe that similar should happen to tactic level radars. We don't need access to this huge radar system, but we would need to have ability to do R&D and production of small radars.
Yeah.
Also, for each interceptor crew, we need infrastructure for them to be able to work. Like they need buses to move around with all equipment. They need power generators, Starlinks, ground station with laptops, connection to radars, and our Ministry of Defense forgot to include this. They were thinking about interceptors. They signed contracts with interceptor manufacturers. They just forgot that they need all of this infrastructure stuff. So as a charitable foundation, we cover these gaps. And we are raising money to cover all the stuff that is very essential for crews, but they were just forgotten when it comes.
Yeah. Some of the most expensive things, I guess, in warfare is air defense. It's really complicated, and the air defense systems and rockets are really expensive. But how is the interceptor drones? Like how much does, like you said, the FPV interceptor drones were the cheapest? What's the cost of one of those? Like what kind of economy is it?
FPV type interceptor is between $1,000 and $2,000, and fixed wing like plane type drone is about $5,000 with 80% of effectiveness. So that's why we really focus on interceptors to intercept Shahids and keep this expensive air defense for cruise missiles, for ballistic missiles.
Yeah. And Ukraine just got a new Minister of Defense, Fedorov. He came as former Minister of Digital Transformation. I've seen that he has, for example, started to work closer with Starnenko. And how is the cooperation with the government going for you? Like how does that kind of cooperation goes? Does it work well, or what do you?
Yes. Could sound weird from civil activists, but we work really closely with our government, with Ministry of Defense, with the Ministry of Digital Transformation, with general staff, and during the full-scale invasion, we've been side by side with helping each other. They come to us to cover what is not covered yet by the government, and we come to them to advocate for certain stuff. Actually, about Minister Fedorov, I have a funny story. I used, as I told, I used to live in New York City for almost 16 years, and when President Zelensky was elected, I was in New York City at my office, and I got a call from a good friend of mine, Alexei Goncharuk, and he told me that he's becoming Prime Minister of Ukraine. He invited me to join his team as an IT advisor, and we've been talking to him back and forth, and came up with an idea to create a Ministry of Digital Transformation. And then we realized that it cannot be just one ministry. It has to be on top of all other ministries, because digitalization should happen to every sector of state. And then we realized that the Ministry of Defense should also be vice minister, to be above all other ministers. And we came up with this idea, and then Zelensky introduced us to Mikhailo Fedorov, who was a pretty young boy at the time. He was, I believe, 25 or something. He was the youngest minister, but he's really smart.
I love that you think that's a very young age. So, good, thanks.
Yeah, and now he's the longest serving minister at the Ukrainian government of the entire history of Ukraine.
Yeah, so you're kind of the mother of the Ministry of Digital Transformation, you could say. That's really, really cool. So you kind of, wow, that's really fascinating.
Yeah, and he did a really good job with digitalization of Ukraine. I believe Ukraine is still the only country in the world with digital passport and all state services available at smartphone. So I was today we've been entering the Ministry of Defense of Norway, and I was wondering why they are not accepting my digital passport, why there is this paper document. It's so outdated.
I think we still need a couple of more decades to get there. I'm afraid, if I was going to guess.
So yeah, I'm very optimistic about the Minister Fedorov becoming being in a new role and leading our defense, because as I told, technology is our religion. So yep. It's very normal that Minister of Digital Transformation now is Minister of Defense.
We see a lot of talks and writing about the intention to replace as many soldiers as possible with drones to save lives, because it's better to lose a drone than to lose a person. But how far can we go? Because if there's robots fighting robots, do you think we'll get there eventually, or do you see any what kind of ambition do you have on the scale of replacing soldiers with the robots?
Yeah, it's a very good point that we want to move people as far as possible from the front line, because the war is very unhuman thing. People are so fragile, so we want to keep them as far from all these dangerous activities on the front line as we can. And with manpower, we cannot fight against Russia just because they have much more population than Ukraine. And we always also value our people much more than Russia does. So yeah, we are trying really hard to bring robots to the front line and have robots replace people in all positions where it's dangerous. Keep people far away. I don't think we can reach full autonomy for robots in the nearest future, but at least we should have remote controlled robots. So, as for robots against robots, it's already happening. The first place we started, it was human being against human beings, and drones or robots attacking humans. Now it's mostly robots against robots. Like we use a lot of ground robots, and one of the biggest challenge right now is to come up with active protection for ground robots, because they're being constantly attacked by FPV drones, by dropping bombs from Mavic drones, from waiting drones, like how Russia is using these fiber optics drones in waiting positions. They're just hiding somewhere close to the roads and waiting for moving vehicles or moving ground robots.
Yeah, I have a friend fighting in Donetsk, and he lost his ground drone to one of the waiting Russian FPV drones, like on Thursday. So it's
but can you say like this robot saves life of human being, because it could be humans driving in a vehicle. So with ground robots, I think we did really good job like moving our logistics to ground robots. It's still difficult to convince some commanders to use more robots instead of pickup trucks, for example, because in places where Russians are not as active, it's still possible to do logistics on pickup trucks or armored vehicles, but as soon as Rubicons, this like special
Russian drones
unit
yeah.
becomes on the other side, logistics is completely locked by their activity. So since 2024, we've been actively advocating and pushing brigades to move logistics to ground robots, and luckily we have like a really good partner, the General Staff. Deputy Chief of General Lebedenko was like really involved in helping us to push units to create UGV units inside of brigades, battalion, and move logistics to ground robots, and also move evacuation efforts to ground robots, evacuation of wounded soldiers and also fallen soldiers. It doesn't make sense to send alive people to keep dead bodies. So we just want to keep our people safe and send robots. And for wounded soldiers, currently it could be just the only option to be evacuated on the ground robot. It's like pretty difficult missions. It could take like more than 10 hours to evacuate for like 10 kilometers, but it's still worth it because it's the only option for them to survive.
But you're still able to evacuate in the end, and it would not be possible without. I think we'll do some questions from the audience now. If we could have you back on stage, Olena, in case we need your expertise. And Jörn, you have to leave us. So a big applause for Jörn. And if there's any questions, please let me know. I think I'll start with one question myself. We talked about the civilian consequences of the Russian attacks, but how does it affect Ukraine's ability to produce drones and other critical stuff you need to fight the war? Because that also must. I know you can't probably say too much details, but how do you keep on producing stuff you need to keep Ukraine safe?
So the more Russia attacks us, the more resilient we become. And when I speak to manufacturers and asking them similar questions, they just plan to be attacked. It's like in their business plan. They know that their factory would live for 12 months. And they try to decentralize production, and instead of having one huge factory, they built 10, 20, 30 small factories. For like some very expensive equipment, they go underground, but also like distributing among like different regions of Ukraine, it helps to keep production alive.
Do you have any questions from the audience, or should we, Hans, if you would just come up here, please?
Hello, my name is Hans Melby, and I'm just curious. Of course, Donald Trump, ever since he took office a year ago, in my opinion, I feel like he's been very, very incompetent. And almost every Saturday, I attend Ukraine demonstrations in front of the Storting, which is the parliament. And the woman who organizes these events, she told me that Trump, he has done nothing for Ukraine. And Trump also, but she also told me that Trump admires Putin. And considering how, and now it seems like Donald Trump, he's like distancing himself more and more from Europe, especially with the current Greenland crisis and insulting NATO forces that served alongside US forces in Afghanistan. So considering how Trump is distancing himself from Europe and his admiration for Putin, do you think because of this, do you think there's a not more significant chance now that a European-wide war will happen within the next 5 years? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I have heard 2 weeks ago the framing, which I really liked very much, that what we call hybrid attacks are phase zero war of Russia. So Russia is already at war at you. People very often tend to think that Russians' war starts with tanks rolling towards the capital of the country. No. Russian wars are much smarter. First, they try to take the country down politically through meddling the elections, corrupting officials, paying for the politicians. If you take a look, I mean, almost all far-right politicians that are, by the way, polling very good. Germany, France, UK. I'm not checking other countries because that's already enough for me to have bad day to take a look at those polls. I mean, they have various, to a certain degree, links with Russia. But then if the country resists hard, if the country refuses to capitulate politically, it may get a war. And that's basically what happened with Ukraine in 2014. You know, when we all went to the streets for the Revolution of Dignity to say that enough is enough, we are not going into the customs union, we are going to the EU, we are back to our cradle, European family, and we were punished with the war in Crimea, in the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. That's why, honestly, I mean, you are very lucky because we are resisting and we are fighting. And Timothy Snyder put it very well, saying that if you compare where we are right now to World War II, we are in the prolonged 1938, if Czechoslovakia decided to fight back and the Allies would support the country militarily. But sometimes I have the feeling that Europeans do not want the prolonged 1938. They want 1939 with full-scale, war and the full-scale fight. I don't know why. I hope that the self-preservation instinct would actually make people understand what is at stake and commit to Ukraine's victory. But if you take a look at the Russia's coalition of evil, it is growing. I mean, it's getting better. And some countries that considered Russia toxic in 2022 are not anymore, especially after Trump rolled with the hands of the American National Guard the red carpet in Alaska for Putin. Putin is not toxic anymore, but our coalition is falling apart. That's why I do not want to speculate when, if Russia will attack you conventionally. It may not. They may understand that it's easier for them to capture Germany, France, UK politically and then they will control Europe. They wouldn't need to start a full-scale war. And you will be here, alone, isolated, armed to the teeth, and trying to protect yourself against the predators around you. By you, I mean Nordic countries, because I do not see the same big problem of the far right in Nordic countries like in the other Europe. But I want you to understand that Russia is at war. You may deny it, you may accept it. Russia is at war with you. And it's much better to defeat Russia in Ukraine than allow them to expand their aggression further via different tools and means.
As I told, I spent most of my adult life in the United States, so I will be a little bit biased. I think that Trump made a really good favor to Europe because Europe relied too much on the United States, especially on defense. A year ago, I was speaking with Polish top military officials and asked them if they have a plan for Russian attacking them. And they told me that they would just step away and allow NATO to fight for them. Ask them if they realize that they are part of NATO. NATO is not some magic alliance that would come from another planet to fight. NATO, it's like your own military, like Polish military, Norwegian military, German military, but most of European countries relied on US army as a military. So in a hard way, in like really bad, stressed way, but Trump made an effort. And actually, I think that finally now European countries wake up and realize that we have to defend ourselves. Like each country has to invest into your own army, own air defense, and not rely on some bigger, stronger guy. So Ukraine learned it in a hard way, and now European countries can either learn in a less hard way and join Ukraine in defending the Europe, or wait until the war comes to other countries in Europe.
Thank you. Do you have any more questions, or should we finish? No? Thank you so much for... Oh, sorry, I didn't see that. Yeah.
Thank you. I have a question to Lyuba. Based on what you see, in Ukraine with the missile and drone attacks on the cities, what should Norway do to prepare ourselves in regard to air defense?
As for energy, I think that Norway is pretty safe. You used to live in cabins with no electricity, so you know.
And we still do that voluntarily every weekend. We then go to the mountains with a cabin.
Yeah, and you also have a pretty good black humor. It also helps, and good alcohol warms you during attacks. So yeah, actually, it's what helps Ukraine to survive. Irony, humor, a little bit of alcohol, and you see, I had a pretty good luxury life in my New Jersey house back in the United States, but I prefer Ukraine over New Jersey right now because it's hard to explain, but it's kind of spiritual feeling when you're close to a battlefield. All people there like your close relatives. You speak to people for a few minutes, and you hug them, you want to come back to them every time, and this is something that, I don't know, to be honest, I like everything in the war besides people being killed. And how Norway could prepare, learn from Ukraine. it's much better to learn from someone else than to go through all this tough things by yourself. What is like really makes us resilient is decentralization. And the more we invest in decentralization, the more resilient we would be. Do not depend on central grid. Same as with this like international security. Same for like your own security. Keep your family independent, your house independent from centralized systems, and then you would be able to survive longer. And like if you go to mountains, you could survive like any invasion.
Perfect. If we don't have anything more from the audience, I think that was all we had. Thank you so much, Olena Halushka and Lyuba Shipovich, for talking to Ukrainapodden, and thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you.